Hello, I'm Christina Brown, and this is Our Take on Arise TV, where we discuss stories and topics of discussion that are related and of interest to women. And joining me today as guest host is Demetria Lucas. Demetria Lucas, welcome to the show.
Thank
so good
you
to
for
see
having
you.
me. It's a pleasure.
You are the author of A Belle in Brooklyn.
I am.
And I understand that you are actually celebrating your blog, A Belle in Brooklyn.
Yes.
Is actually celebrating, what is it, the 6th or 7th year?
The 7th year, yes, 7 years. 7 years of a blog. It's kind of
Congratulations.
flew by.
Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, my blog it started off with dating and relationships, and that's what the book is based on. It was basically my chronicles being a single woman dating in New York, sort of like a Sex and the City, but a black girl's version. So I gave my take on, the guys I was dating, some of the interactions my friends were going through, and it was very honest and very real, no sugarcoating, the good, bad, and sometimes the ugly.
Ooh,
Yeah.
sounds juicy.
It was.
A little later in the show, we're actually going to be talking about relationships. In fact, we're going to be talking about arranged marriages. So I can't wait to get your take
I've got
on
some
that.
insight.
I bet you do.
I've got some take.
All right, well, don't hold back. Meanwhile, topping our daily take headlines today, the Supreme Court has struck down a key part of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, the map that determines which states must get federal permission before they change their voting laws. 9 states with a history of discrimination at the polls, mostly in the South, must get approval from the Justice Department or a special panel of judges before they change their voting laws. Well, despite Nelson Mandela's failing health, President Barack Obama is expected to visit him during Obama's short tour of Africa. Mandela remains in critical condition with a lung infection. The 94-year-old has captured the world's attention as his health has deteriorated. Outside his Pretoria hospital, several doves were released to signify the freedom Nelson helped usher in following years of South Africa's apartheid rule. And Demetria, this is, of course, something that we have all been covering for weeks, if not months. I mean, for the past several weeks at least.
He's been ill for a while.
We've been seeing him go in and out of the hospital, but really for the past few months, he has been under the watchful eye of really the world.
Yes. It's very difficult to explain what Nelson Mandela means, not just to South Africa, but just as a world leader in terms of his practices, his integrity, the message he shared. I don't know anyone who hasn't read, was it Long Walk to Freedom? I poured through a tomb, but I poured through it. But he's just an inspiration to so many people. He's had such an impact on the way we look at the world and the changes he's made to it. Everyone's goal is to come and make a difference while they're here, and prime example.
And he certainly has done that. There's certainly no question of that. And when you see the outpouring of support that is coming in from around the globe, you definitely get the sense that there is no question just how much of an impact and how much of his legacy will affect generations for years to come.
Yes, well, we're praying for him. Everybody's praying for him.
Certainly. Well, this one coming to us from Brazil. Brazilian demonstrators may have finally inched closer to government concessions following weeks of massive protests. Brazilian President Dilma Rousseff has announced plans for several reforms. She's promised to move forward with fiscal measures to steady the economy, but also reduce inflation. And Demetria, we were talking about this not too long ago, just before the show. I mean, these are scenarios that we're really seeing play out in a number of different countries around the world. People taking to the streets in large numbers, demanding change in the way that government is run. Yeah,
well, I think after the situation in Egypt and they saw the power of numbers, the power of coming together. Everyone always says, the fist is stronger than the fingers, but people are starting to really see it. And social media, of course, is helping fuel these protests around the world. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to see what's going to happen in Brazil in the coming weeks.
And I think the other thing that's important, particularly about this situation, is Dilma Rousseff herself was someone who, in a lot of ways, at least in the initial stages of the demonstrations, embraced the fact that so many people were taking to the streets and were using their voice and using their ability to gather and galvanize. A much different response, for example, than what we saw in Turkey, in Egypt, and in other countries.
Well, it would be smart of her to listen to, her people, because Turkey and Egypt didn't end up so well for their leaders.
Not at all. Not at all. Well, this lady, someone who is yet to be named right now, simply known as witness number 8. But when prosecutors call her to the stand in the George Zimmerman murder trial today, she is expected to paint a very distinct picture about the last few minutes of Trayvon Martin's life. She's considered a star witness and was on the phone with the unarmed 17-year-old just before he was killed. And of course, this coming on day 2 of the trial, we of course heard the opening arguments yesterday, the George Zimmerman trial. The prosecution certainly sounded very concise, succinct and clear in their opening statement. The defense, not so much. It took 3 hours for them to get their opening statements out.
Yeah, well, you know, I wasn't able to watch the trial yesterday. I was on a deadline, unfortunately, but everyone kept talking about, like, he opened with a knock-knock joke.
Unbelievable.
The defense lawyer, it's so disrespectful to Trayvon Martin's family. Like, this isn't a joke. This is a dead teenager, a dead, unarmed teenager at that. I'm glad to see that this trial is finally taking place. It's been long delayed, and everyone's been watching to see how it turns out.
And it doesn't seem like this is going to be something that will resolve itself quickly.
No.
The estimates are somewhere between anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks, potentially, for the trial. That seems unusually long, but given what is at stake here,
yes.
We're talking about a case that really rattled the emotional foundation, not only of the area in Florida, but of the country in terms of just bringing racial tensions back to the forefront, back to the topic of discussion yet again.
No, I think it's a fear of every mother, of every aunt, of every cousin, of every young black man or older black man, that you're just sort of, not even sort of, that you're walking down the street, minding your business, not bothering anyone, and that you are attacked, killed for nothing. The kid was coming back from the store getting, you know, soda and Skittles, like iced tea and Skittles.
It is difficult to imagine just what kind of explanation will be a reasonable, beyond reasonable doubt explanation for the jury to potentially acquit George Zimmerman of second-degree murder, because based on certainly the court of public opinion, it looks like it would be a very difficult case to consider him anything other than guilty. But of course, it is in the hands of six jurors right now.
6 jurors, yep. So we will let them decide.
Yeah, certainly. Well, you have been watching Our Take, and of course, I must do my shameless plug, as I always do. You can follow us on Twitter. You can also like us and leave comments on our Facebook fan page. And of course, you can always do that simply by going to @OurTakeArise TV. But before we do that, I want to move on to one of our last stories for the Daily Take Roundtable. And it's actually quite difficult to imagine that 4 years now have gone by since the tragic death of Michael Jackson. Near the time of the 4th anniversary of his death, however, his 2 children, Paris and Prince, have actually found themselves witnesses in his wrongful death trial initiated by Jackson's mother. Demetria, do you remember where you were when you heard that Michael Jackson had died?
Absolutely. I was in the Essence offices, and I think a CNN tweet went out, you know, I think somebody had said it before, maybe it was like a TMZ, and no one believed it. And then CNN sent out, you know, the breaking news, the breaking news email, and the whole office just, the streaks like throughout the office. Some of my editors started crying. It was a very, very emotional day. Michael Jackson he seemed like he'd go on forever. Yeah. You know, I couldn't even imagine it. Even now, it's hard to fathom that he's not here. And it's been 4 years.
And he was preparing for that huge tour.
Concert, yeah.
We saw images in the lead up prior to his death of him performing, of him practicing his routine with the dancers. I mean, it's the thought of him not being with us just seemed too far from reality. I remember that I was in a movie theater, and what's interesting is I can't even remember what movie I was watching, but I remember I was in the movie theater, and naturally I turned off my cell phone when I was in the theater. And when I came out of the theater, I turned my cell phone on, and the first thing that I saw was a series of email messages and tweets saying that Michael Jackson had died. And in my mind, it's funny, I was actually thinking, which Michael Jackson are they talking about? They can't be talking about the pop star, not Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson. It can't be him. It has to be somebody else. I just could not wrap my mind around him not being with us.
Yeah.
It seemed too far from reality. And then I think the other thing that made his passing so difficult were the circumstances surrounding it as well. You know, it wasn't like this was, say, for example, someone who was already suffering from some sort of illness or even, you know, an accident of some sort. You know, it just seemed suspect, and there were rumors flying as to whether or not, you know, was he really passed, you know?
Well, it was so sudden, and then I think also, too, because of the doctor, Conrad Murray, his involvement. You expect your doctor to be there to protect you. And then there was the idea that, I mean, actually found guilty, wasn't he? Like,
found guilty of manslaughter,
you know,
that's right.
could have done something and chose not to and went and cleaned up the room. And it's like, no, Michael Jackson is dying, you call 911. Like, you don't sit around and try to figure it out, you know? But yeah, it was so tragic, so sudden and so tragic. I can't believe it's been 4 years.
And what's funny about that is that it almost now feels like it was just yesterday. It doesn't feel like it was 4 years ago. With regards to Conrad Murray, Michael Jackson, we now know had overdosed on propofol, which is, for lack of a better word, it's the kind of anesthetic that doctors use when putting someone under, sedating them for surgery. And as you mentioned, Dr. Conrad Murray found guilty for administering that very deadly dose. What is kind of fascinating about the circumstances surrounding Michael Jackson's death is that in many ways he continues to live on, not only obviously in his music and what he did for people around the world, but also the controversy. It doesn't end.
It doesn't end.
And right now, as I mentioned earlier, you know, his children are embroiled in a wrongful death lawsuit brought by Jackson's mother against AEG, the concert promoter. So that in and of itself almost gives him new life, of course not in the most appropriate way.
Right. Yeah, it's that's not the way I would like to see Michael Jackson live on. I feel like when he was alive, like the rumors and the controversy, we really didn't do right by him as a public audience. We put him through a lot that was unnecessary. And so I would really just like his music and the best parts of his legacy to live on. I hate to see that, you know, there's still so much drama 4 years later.
Yes, and in light of that drama, of course, we cannot avoid the discussion about his daughter Paris and her attempted suicide about a week and a half or so ago. It seems like drama follows him just as much as his music highs and lows. It follows him, and it certainly follows his family. I'm curious as to what kind of feedback were you getting on your blog, A Belle in Brooklyn, at that time?
For Michael Jackson's passing?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. You know, I don't know that I blogged about it immediately. Like, I was very upset because my offices at the time when I was working for Essence, we were located right off Rockefeller Center. So after work, we walked out to Times Square, and I don't know where everyone went and got their Michael Jackson memorabilia. Like, it was in the closet, apparently. Like, people have pants and you know, glittered suit jackets just hanging out, waiting for use.
And the red leather jacket,
and the red leather jacket. But people were in the middle of Times Square just sort of hanging out, singing along, dancing in the streets. It was a very sad occasion, but also very celebratory. So I was doing Michael Jackson Michael Jackson celebratory moments, and then, you know, Spike Lee did a big concert in Brooklyn. So yeah, I was doing more celebrating than sitting down writing. Like,
right. I remember I went out and I bought a pair of aviators.
Nice.
Sunglasses. That was, you know, that was channeling my inner Michael Jackson.
I did YouTube videos to like the old Jackson 5 videos and danced around in my socks. That was my homage. Yeah.
That's the way that we want to remember him, by bringing joy and enthusiasm.
Yes.
Well, keep it right here. You are watching Our Take. We've got a lot more going on in the show.